edition of Dolphins Detail. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to continue our Down to the Details series where we answer 4 very, very tough questions about the state of the Miami Dolphins. Today it's about the edge rushers. But before we get into all that, you're joining Jake Mendel, Marek Brave. Marek, we were talking about some pretty depressing news right before we got on the air. So I would like to get your thoughts on it. We got maybe a premature farewell from Tyreek Hill, did we, the other day?
He gave us a peace sign.
Oh, and not even a good way.
If he gave us the peace sign, but he leaves a couple Lombardi trophies on the way out, then I can handle it. But if Tyreek comes and he only plays 4 years in Miami and then he calls it quits when he's at the top of his game, I'm going to feel a little jilted. I'm going to be a little salty about that.
So a little bit of background. I think it was on Tyreek's podcast. I could be completely wrong about that, but he basically
I
came
think
out
he
and
was
said,
on I think he was on a Kansas City radio station or either a podcast from a Chiefs player, something like that. Does his podcast even exist anymore? I used to listen to it last offseason. There's like all these little teaser videos now, but does it actually show up on Spotify anymore? I don't even know. Do they have new episodes?
I do wonder if they just kind of load up on the off season and then they'll just kind of run him out going up to the regular season.
Makes
But
sense.
Tyreek basically came out and said he wants to finish his current contract with the Miami Dolphins, and then, as Merrick said, kind of throw up that peace sign and call it a career. Basically, his biggest reason he wants to get into the business sides of things. I mean, we already see it now. He's always promoting his own merchandise. You just promoted his podcast. So Merrick, I'll start with you. You hear news like this. I mean, I instantly this is kind of a weird comparison, but I mean, when LeBron James came to Miami, he stayed for 4 years. They were 4 absolutely wonderful years. A little salty when he left, but I mean, man, like I kind of see some similarities of what Tyreek's been able to bring to the Dolphins so far.
Again, if Tyreek brings a championship to Miami, a Lombardi trophy, a Super Bowl victory to Miami, then we can't be too mad if he does decide to peace out in a few years. But if that doesn't happen and he leaves and he's still one of the best players in the game, I'm going to be a little salty. But I guess if you try to look at it from his perspective, he's playing a dangerous game against guys who are a lot bigger than him, uh, and he wants to live the rest of his life comfortably without the aches and pains that come along with some serious injuries. And again, fingers crossed and knock on wood, he hasn't really suffered any major injuries in his career thus far, and hopefully. That remains the case as he moves along these next few seasons with the Miami Dolphins. But if he's able to leave on top, not injured, and able to live a healthy lifestyle, for the rest of his days, then more power to him. But you better bring us that Lombardi trophy first, dude.
That's what it's really going to boil down to. But man, I mean, Tyreek's been such a blast to have around the organization, and I kind of I'm in a spot where I'm not thinking more than 2 years down the road. I think just in the NFL, it's such a crazy league that it's really hard to. I mean, we're kind of saying that we're set on Tua and we have him for 2 years, so it's just kind of interesting to see where we were maybe 2 years ago, and then we'll see where we are 2 years from now. I mean, just look at those Eagles teams, man. It's the perfect example. The Eagles won the Super Bowl 2017, and 2 years later, that entire team, the coach, the front office, everyone is looking different. So, I mean, that's just something to keep in mind. I mean, the emotions do kind of come up because you love watching him play. He was having a record-setting season with the Miami Dolphins for most of the season, so it's a little disappointing. Merrick, something I do want to ask you because he was on a Kansas City Chiefs radio station, and he was actually talking a little smack to Chris Jones, saying that he can't wait to chop block him from behind. And you mentioned it. People are twice the size of Tyreek Hill, and I think one thing that people really don't pick up is Tyreek. Again, I don't want to discredit anyone here, so please jump on me if I am. He kind of is a showman, kind of like a wrestler. Like he's willing to kind of say whatever people want to hear. He's saying, "I would have went to Cleveland if they, spent money on me." He's like, "I wanted to go to the Jets, but the taxes are too big." It seems like he's kind of cool with just going with the flow. Nothing he says is really downright like stick a flag in it, but it's kind of fun to see him be a personality out there.
Yeah, he's definitely a little bit of a politician. He's he's trying to butter every fan base up because he's trying to grow that podcast. He's trying to grow his Twitch channel. I think he streams the video games there, so he wants everybody to
The
join
video
him, not
games. What a
just
boomer.
yeah. He wants everybody on the stream, not just Dolphins fans.
That's kind of the key, and you know what? all the power to him. It's awesome having Tyreek at Miami, and I hope we never can sit there and say this is the last peace sign. If there is eventually a last peace sign, I don't want it to be known, that type of thing. You ever see those memes? It's like you and your friends went out onto the
Oh god,
playground that one last. I want it to be like I
you
don't
make me
want to know that
cry.
this is our last time on the playground. But let's reel it back in. Let's reel it back in. We're talking some Dolphin details today, Merrick, and today we are going into the edge rushers. One of Miami, I think, biggest positions of strength. And during this whole exercise, Merrick, we're here to answer four key questions. Where do things stand with each group? What makes them good? What needs to happen this offseason, and what does success look like on the field? So, Merrick, I like this edge outside linebacker group because there's a lot happening here. And it's important to keep in mind as we go through these positions. Byron Jones, his money's still on the books. So while the Miami Dolphins have, I think, less than 2 million cap space, that will balloon a little bit after the draft. And of course, Miami does have 4 draft picks. I think it's the second least in the league, but 4 draft picks is enough to make an impact. So, Merrick, let's run through it here. You look at this group of edge rushers, you look at this group of outside linebackers. Surface level, what is the first thing you see when you start kind of just going through that list of names they have there?
I mean, I look at a group that should be dominant. This should be a dominant pass rush. You got guys like Bradley Chubb, Jaelen Phillips, even Emmanuel Ogbah, who used to be Miami's best pass rusher before they loaded up on that position. This should be a group that dominates this season. They're switching schemes. There's not going to be as many blitzes this year under Vic Fangio. Not a big blitz guy. Likes to send that base four. You never know which four are coming. He likes to switch that up and disguise that pre-snap. But you're going to get a base four rush. And last season, the Dolphins, even when they didn't blitz, when Jaelen Phillips and Bradley Chubb were on the field together, they had a 40% pass rush win rate, which was tops in the NFL. So if you can keep Bradley Chubb healthy and you can keep Jaelen Phillips healthy and you put them in this new defense under Vic Fangio, I think those two players in particular should have some great success this year for the Miami Dolphins.
Bradley Chubb ranked sixth in the NFL last year with 3 forced fumbles. He had 10 total sacks between his time in Denver and Miami. Of course, you got to remember that he was traded to Miami midseason for one of the
But he was a
team's
bust. He was a bust, Jake. That's what Twitter will tell you. Bradley Chubb was a bust. Don't trade for that 26-year-old pass rusher. Don't trade that late first round draft pick for a 26-year-old pass rusher who had double-digit sacks last year while battling injuries. He's a bust.
the
Come
club
on.
on his hand, and that's the stuff that kills me too, because I think it's weird, the city of Miami is known for clubbing, but the amount of players on the Miami Dolphins who legitimately had clubs on their hands last season was pretty crazy. I cannot wait to talk about Alec Ingold and how that worked. But Bradley Chubb was one of those guys. He was dealing with an injury late, but the furnace was still cooking, right? They were still developing that pressure. Jaelen Phillips, he was the 7th highest graded pass rusher, according to Pro Football Focus, with a grade of 88.8. That's 10 sacks, 19 quarterback hits, which was 4th in the league last year. And then you got a newcomer here in Malik Reed, who had 1 sack last season. It was his first year in Pittsburgh. And I think it's important to keep in mind, Malik Reed didn't choose to go to Pittsburgh in free agency. He was traded to Pittsburgh. So we saw him do things like out there covering slots. We saw him doing things that he wasn't doing in Denver, where Vic Fangio was his head coach, where he had 8 sacks in 2020. So we spoke about this a little bit with David Long Jr. and the inside linebackers, but that seemed like a real move driven by analytics, driven by the fact that we know what this guy's capable of. And despite he didn't do it last year with just 1 sack, we're excited what he can do. And just to kind of wrap up the group here, Cameron Good, who I think was a 7th round pick either last year or the year before, he's kind of one of those guys who's just trying to lift himself up onto the roster. And then finally, the golden child himself, AVG, is back with the team. Andrew Van
One of
Ginkel.
my favorite players. One of my
He
favorites.
he really developed a great role, and he did it the old fashioned grit and grind way. He made some plays on special teams. Came on the field for a few plays. You instantly saw that blonde hair get on fire. And something worth noting, man, he played 16 games last year while getting appendicitis on August 26th. So not only did he have to deal with the fact that sucks, is that you're a professional athlete, you lost a boatload of weight, and then you got to try to figure out your body and work your way back up. So, Merrick, this is a pretty interesting group. You got 5 guys here. Andrew Van Ginkel's the oldest guy at 27 years old. So, man, I want to ask you, and please don't, throw me off a cliff here, but the edge, what gives him an
Oh,
edge?
gives him an edge. You left out my favorite Andrew Van Ginkel stat, which was he visited the Patriots this offseason and then gave them the double bird on the
It's a
way
good
out, said, "I'm
stat.
going back to Miami, baby." So, hey, man, you live in New England. You know that weather's nicer down in Miami. You got the girls on the beach, and yeah, I think he's married. I think he has a wife and a young child. So, you know, I won't I won't connect him to those beautiful women on the beach. But anyways, I digress. This group, like we talked about, should be the most dominant. Maybe wide receivers would be the other group on this team that could claim that most dominant title. But the edge rusher group is one of the strongest positions for the Miami Dolphins. Like you talked about, Jaelen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, Emmanuel Ogbah. Those are the three studs. But even the guys that are bringing up the rear there, in Malik Reed and Andrew Van Ginkel, those guys are good players too. Those guys are high motor players. Those guys are players who in the past have racked up those stats, have gotten those sacks. Andrew Van Ginkel is a forced fumble machine. It feels like when you need a big play, he's there to make it. So very happy he was able to come back. And I think that Malik Reed signing is going to end up being a very underrated signing for this team. Like you said, in Pittsburgh last year, playing out of his element, wasn't a great player. But in the Vic Fangio defense, 8 sacks in 2020 and a couple sacks even prior to that. And I like him because correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he was an undrafted player, correct? Malik Reed was undrafted when he signed with Denver, when he entered the league. So he still has something to prove, even after all these years, even after having a couple seasons of high productivity in Denver, he still gets kind of a low money deal to come to Miami, and he might look at that as a bit disrespectful to a player who had success in this style of defense. So you're going to get the best out of Malik Reed. You're going to get the best out of Andrew Van Ginkel, who signed a 1 year deal and wants to get paid going forward. And and I like those types of players
Yep.
behind your superstars, because those are the players that when those stars either get injured, need to take a game off, need to just take a few plays off because they're gassed. You want those guys coming in who have been successful in this style defense, who have been successful in the past, and can make something happen for you. And I think the Dolphins have those guys.
You bring up Emmanuel Ogbah, and I didn't even include him with the edge rushers or the outside linebackers. And I think this is kind of an interesting discussion to have because it's not going to be the first or last time we have it. I kind of viewed him in the 3-4 defense as more of a defensive lineman. So I'm kind of interested to hear your thoughts when, you mentioned a little bit earlier about how they're going to be blitz or, sending four guys most of the time. Well, if I just list off Zach Sealer, Christian Wilkins, Emmanuel Ogbah, Bradley Chubb, and Jaelen Phillips, those five guys belong rushing the passer, and that's five guys right there. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how they're going to kind of share the workload in the sense of they're not going to be blitz happy. I think there is kind of a logjam in that defensive line. I don't know where Agba is going to line up. He might very well be an edge rusher, but I do think there's a uh little bit of a few problems that need to be solved out of that group, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, sure, but I think those are good problems to have.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah.
Yeah, when you have that many quality players that can rotate in and out, that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get fresh legs. You're going to get more pressure on the quarterback. You're hopefully going to get higher sack numbers and more turnovers. And to have multiple guys who can provide that for you, and then like you said, you mentioned the guys on the inside like Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer, and even Raekwon Davis might see
Yep.
himself rounding back into form under a Vic Fangio. Like this defensive line group and this edge group in particular, such a good group on paper, and we just need to see it happen in the games. I think they can be a dominant force. But yeah, I think Emmanuel Ogbah, he might take a step back. Two guys like Bradley Chubb, two guys like Jaelen Phillips, even maybe to a Malik Reed, who again we talked about has experience in this system. But Emmanuel Ogbah is a good player. He can get the pass
1,000%.
rush. But he's that bigger body. He can also set the edge and stop the run. And in a defense like Vic Fangio's, where the lighter boxes are going to be more prevalent, you need those players that can come up and stop the run. Without these running backs getting past them and leaving it up to the linebackers. So I think Emmanuel Ogbah will have a role. A pretty good sized role on this defense, and I think he'll be an impact player for this team as long as they don't trade him. But I think at this point, it's not looking like he'll be traded in the offseason.
Yeah, I think there were a couple people concerned with Ogba in the sense of, they gave him a contract. And I remember a few years ago there was the Andre Branch pyramid scheme where you have one good year. I think he had 9 sacks, and he parlayed that into a 3-year, $27 million contract and did zip with it. I think he was traded to like the Jags or something. So I like to keep that pyramid scheme in mind. But Ogba, I mean, I see as someone who is not only better than that, someone who can rush the passer better than that, but I'm interested to see him not be one of the foundational pieces. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to deny his talent or anything, but if the defense isn't relying on him to be one of the main guys and opposing offenses aren't instantly looking for his 91 on the field, I'm interested to see what kind of havoc he can cause. Merrick, you brought up an interesting point earlier, and there was kind of a little bit of salt around the Bradley Chubb signing. The idea that, we wasted a first round pick for this guy on a team that was mediocre. He had 10 sacks, but who cares about that? And so let's look at the alternative and what could have happened, especially when we consider offseason priorities this year. Let's say the team didn't trade for Bradley Chubb. The positives, you have that first round pick, and you're going to get a guy who's relatively cheap. The negatives is you're trying to win now. You have a group that's ready to go. And in what you're paying for, while you're paying for someone cheap, you're going to get mistakes, you're going to get miscues, and generally speaking, you might get someone who you can have zero trust in come November and December. So I think that's one thing that a lot of people are really missing with Bradley Chubb. 26, he's about to enter his prime. He understands defenses, he understands offenses, and he has that track record of success. And yes, there's a chance that that pick can turn into the greatest player of all time, sure. But for what the Dolphins are doing and the fact they don't need to hit these long-term home runs with all these picks. Thank you, Larry Tunsil. I mean, I see the Bradley Chubb as, even if it's not going out of the park, that is a safe as you can find ground rule double in the entire league.
Yeah, you need those players who you know what you're getting when they line up on the field. You know who Bradley Chubb is. He's been a dominant player in this league before. Sure, he's battled some injuries, but that's why you were able to trade for a 26-year-old pass rusher in the
Exactly.
first place. If he was completely healthy all the time, the Broncos aren't letting him go because pass rusher is one of the premier positions in the National Football League. And if you don't have not just one, but two, three, four of them, you're trying to get those players. And you weren't going to be able to draft anyone in the 20s in this draft who has the pedigree that Bradley Chubb has. And that's what the draft is. The draft is a crapshoot. You're only going to hit on what, like 50% of your top 10 draft picks, let alone the rest of the first round.
Your praises of God if you do that, even.
Yeah, your percentages are declining the further you get into the draft of being able to draft an impact player that will be dominant for you for years to come. So instead of rolling the dice and, like you said, getting a cheaper contract for this player, you send that pick away because you say, we want to win now while our star quarterback is still on his rookie deal. So you're not paying Tua, so you might as well pay your edge rusher in Bradley Chubb, as well as your other pieces, your Tyreek Hills and your Xavien Howards and your Jalen Ramseys
Christian
and these
Wilkins.
Christian Wilkins, which hopefully we'll be able to do a show on his extension when that finally comes. Because if it doesn't come, we're gonna have some problems, Chris
Oh,
Greer.
yeah.
Chris Greer. I've been a fan of Chris Greer's for the most part, while other people have trashed him online. But if you don't get that Wilkins deal done, then I'm jumping the fence. I'm gonna be on the other side over there with the dudes that are trashing you on Twitter daily. But Bradley Chubb, you went out, you made the deal because you want to win now, and he's a player when healthy who can help you do that. And again, we've talked about it before, but I'll talk about it again now. He has the experience in the Vic Fangio defense, and most of his success in the NFL came under Vic Fangio. So now he gets to play with him again. He gets a former teammate in Malik Reed playing on the opposite side from time to time, and he gets his buddies in there, Andrew Van Ginkel, Jaelen Phillips, players he made relationships with last season. He gets to build upon that and continue to grow with this team. And I really like we talked about, like you said earlier, I really do expect this edge group to be dominant, one of the most dominant groups on the team.
I gotta ask because it was kind of like it was scripted in the sense where in the middle of the season, Mike McDaniel was asked about like his preferred players, that type of thing, and he said something along the lines of he'd draft an edge rusher high up every single year, and that's just his mindset. You need these great edge rushers. Had to be in the within 2 months that Bradley Chubb was on the team. So, Merrick, I gotta ask you. I mean, you look at this group. Just for the sake of it, I'm going to stick with the five. We're going to say Emmanuel Ogbah is a defensive lineman, and just for the sake of this argument here, does anything else happen to this group? Do you see a draft pick being used on an edge rusher? Would you consider Mike McDaniel's comments, despite the fact Jaelen Phillips, rookies on a rookie contract, stud Bradley Chubb, and whatever it may be?
Yeah, I do think that that's a possibility. Would I do it early? Would I do it with pick 51? No, I would not. Would I do it with my third round pick? Possibly. Would I do it with my sixth or seventh round pick? Kind of a dart throw, throw
Mhm.
stuff against the wall and see what sticks? Absolutely. Because like Mike McDaniel said, you're always looking for those pass rushers. It's a premium position in the NFL. It's like quarterback, it's like cornerback, it's like wide receiver. When you don't have them, you want them. So I could see them using a later round draft pick to bring in an edge rusher, but I think there are more pressing needs on this team right now. So I don't really see them going after somebody in rounds 2 or 3.
I have to agree with you. I think a sixth or seventh round where there's some sort of connection to someone, we knew this guy's coach or whatever it may be. I think that's kind of the move.
Small
I
school
would
guy, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it in even like the top 3 or 4 priorities that the Dolphins need, but I do think that Mike McDaniel's mindset and the philosophy is very important. And I do want to break the trend of, the idea of, hey, we have needs X, Y, and Z in the draft. We got to fill them. It's no, we want to get just the best players available. And the way this Dolphins roster is set up, I think they're in a good spot where they aren't so hamstrung by any position at all, really, where they have to say, we need to do this, otherwise our team's going to be terrible. But just to transition one step further, Merrick, what does this unit look like on the field? I spoke about this and said I was going to be pretty dramatic about it, but while it's going to be dramatic, I think it's true. If this edge rushing group isn't the best part of this Miami Dolphins defense, I am a little concerned that they might not be able to get where they want to go. While Jalen Ramsey's awesome, while Xavien Howard is awesome, they are getting just a little older. I'm not saying they're old. What I'm saying is Jaelen Phillips is entering his third year at 23 years old, ascending. Bradley Chubb at 26, ascending. Xavien Howard has dealt with some injuries recently. You can kind of isolate one cornerback. So to me, man, if this edge group, if there aren't CBS features on pre-games about Jaelen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, come November, I think this defense might be in a little bit of trouble. Maybe not because they're giving up a lot of yards. They just don't have all the answers to be a playoff contender.
Yeah, I think you're going to see I understand the nervousness there, but I think that your nerves will be eased pretty early on in the season. I think you're gonna see hashtag sacks on the beach. I think I think that's
Nice.
what they like to do on Dolphins Twitter. You're gonna see that once more, and I think this is finally the year that the Dolphins get that big sack number guy and maybe multiple guys. Maybe you'll see that from Phillips and Chubb together. Maybe they'll both have double digit sacks this year, which would be fantastic. I'm a big defense guy myself. When I played high school football, I was an outside linebacker. Wasn't often tasked with blitzing the quarterback, but I love watching good defensive football. Growing up, when I was young, we had Dan Marino, and that was that high flying offense. But once I hit my teenage years and was able to really kind of dive into what the game was all about, that's when we had those dominant early 2000s Dolphins defenses with
Yep.
Zach Thomas, with Jason Taylor, guys like that. So I think this defense, while last year a lot of the metrics were saying, "Hey, they're headed in the right direction," we didn't quite get the results that we were looking for. So I think last year was kind of the teaser, the precursor, the appetizer, so to speak. This year we get the main course. This year we see a dominant defense once again, and like you said, most likely led by these edge rushers.
Bradley Chubb at least 8 sacks in 3 of his 5 seasons. Most were 13 as a rookie with the Denver Broncos. If we want to ask Jaelen Phillips to do anything this offseason, I mean, it was a blast to watch him in that playoff game. I think Bradley Chubb, Jaelen Phillips, Christian Wilkins, these are guys, when you're in a division with Josh Allen, you need these guys, someone who can rip down a quarterback. Phillips, man, ranked 177th among edge rushers when it came to tackling last season. And that blows my mind when you consider he was like the eighth highest edge rusher. And, you look at someone's report card, you see a bunch of A minuses, and you don't want to be like, all right, what else can you do better? That's a little discouraging. But man, his tackling was pretty poor at times where I don't think he needs to take a huge jump to be that big volume double digit sack guy unless the referees are deciding to penalize him for just rolling onto Justin Herbert again. That might get in the way of some of his stack
Oh
numbers.
my god, that was terrible. What an awful call that was. Ugh. Yeah, no, Jaelen Phillips, I'm expecting big things. I recently purchased his jersey. I let you know
Uh oh.
via the DM. So that could actually spell some bad things for Jaelen Phillips this upcoming season. I have a little jersey curse. Whenever I wear a player's jersey, they end up having a terrible game. So
Oh
much so
no.
last year that I stopped wearing jerseys altogether on game day. I did not wear one for the playoff game, and what do you know? They actually played much better than most people expected them to. But Jaelen Phillips, I'm expecting big things. Gonna be rocking that jersey with pride at the beginning of the season. And who knows? Maybe astronaut. Maybe Bradley Chubb is the next one after that.
This just generally speaking just seems like such a group you can trust. I mean, just having Andrew Van Ginkel on the back end, just a veteran who's been along for so long. And I'm interested to see Malik Reed. It's going to be fun to kind of circle both him and David Long as guys who, David Long, I kind of expect to be on the field most of the time, but just to kind of keep your eye out for these guys on, what are they trying to do on the field? What are they looking to see them doing? Merrick, to start to wrap up here, I have an interesting question. Let's compare this group of edge rushers, specifically Bradley Chubb and Jaelen Phillips. Let's compare that to, let's say, 2013 Olivier Verdon, Cameron Wake. Who you got?
That's tough because I'm a big Cam Wake guy, as you can see
So
with the
underrated.
with the poster behind me. That's a Cam Wake number 91. Let's see if we can bring it up there so you can see it a little bit better. There he is. That's my guy. Oh man, I'm bad at this. There he is. Big Cam Wake guy. Um, if Bradley Chubb and Jaelen Phillips, if either one of them surpasses Cam Wake's productivity on the field, I think we're in for a treat. I think that spells good things for this Dolphins defense. I liked Olivier Vernon. I think he was similar to Phillips right now. There was a lot of potential that never really kind of played out the way you wanted it to. And then he heads off to the Giants and didn't do a whole lot for them either. So I do expect bigger things for Phillips than we saw from Olivier Vernon. So I don't know. Maybe it's sacrilegious to say with the poster on my wall, but I think I'm taking Bradley Chubb and Jaelen Phillips
Sacrilegious.
over Cam Wake and Olivier Vernon. I think it's because of Vernon. Obviously, nothing against Cam Wake, but yeah, I think I'll go with Chubb and Phillips. How about you?
I think I agree, and I wish I looked up a little more research about. I feel like Chubb and Phillips just strictly because they're bigger. I think the duo they're just bigger bodies on the outside. I think they're less isolated to get bullied in the running game. I think I for as much as I love Cameron Wake and for as underestimated he was for his entire career, there were those issues with him, stopping the run. He's a smaller dude and he played his body weight to perfection. It's just everyone's going to have those weaknesses. I do think I'd take these guys now, but we'll have to wait and see. Olivier Vernon, I think the issue always was this guy is always pressuring the quarterback. He's always in the quarterback's face, but once there was like going to a museum, there was just a rope taped off, and he just couldn't touch the quarterback for some reason. He just never learned to touch the paintings. But overall, man, I do have to say again, if you have any last final thoughts, that this group is going to be such a fun group to watch, and even when we're talking about maybe co-op practices during the offseason with the Eagles or whoever it may be, I think we're going to hear a lot of people tweeting about Chubb and Phillips, whether it's our own beat writers, Miami's beat writers, or other teams. I think they're going to stand out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and they get the benefit of playing under Vic Fangio. Chubb has experience in that defense, but this will be Phillips' first time playing with a coordinator, playing under a coordinator with the pedigree that Vic Fangio has. So, I mean, what do they say? The sky's the limit, or what's it? The sky's the roof. The roof's the
Roof is the
sky.
ceiling,
What's
baby.
roof is the ceiling? There it is. Again, too many boomerisms from me. I'm too old for this. But under Vic Fangio, I do expect some big things from Phillips.
And then that lets us switch to the question, what do you expect? Please let us know. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you're having fun, hit that subscribe button. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you're enjoying us, we have already done these shows about the safeties, inside linebackers, cornerbacks. We have the defensive line soon before we get to special teams, the best part, and then we'll transition to offense. But that is all the time we have. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching Dolphins Detail. We'll talk to you next time.